Joining us here on the set, our Ukraine correspondent Gulliver Cragg. Hello to you, Gulliver. In from Ukraine here in Western Europe, nearly a year into this war, how are people reacting to this ongoing war?
Yeah, I'm just having a short break from there and going back in a week's time. Yeah, it's been nearly a year, and on the one hand, I think Ukrainians are hugely proud of the way the country united and the armed forces managed to fend off this invasion that most people didn't give them a chance. And they're also very pleased with the recent news of the deliveries of main battle tanks that they finally managed to persuade Western allies to deliver. And that gives them some confidence that ultimately they are going to be able to force the invading Russians off their territory. I would say that, in fact, what you see in poll results would show that there's hugely high morale in Ukraine, if you like. You know, most people really are confident that Ukraine will end up winning the war. And perhaps, probably, most people are hopeful that it's going to happen rather sooner than what the more sober, neutral military analysts might suggest. There's that confidence. There's also the fear of perhaps Russia resorting to some kind of more terrible tactic than what we've seen before, though you don't hear many Ukrainians talk about that fear that much. But also, this war has taken a terrible toll on everybody's mental health. You know, people are really stressed and anxious, and, you know, all the time you have to make decisions when the sirens go off or whether to go to the shelter. Lots of, most children are not going to school. They're being schooled at home if they're in Ukraine. There are also lots of families who are still separated because women and children are allowed to leave the country, men not. So many reasons for people to feel under really, really great strain. Yeah, I mean, and I think it does definitely take a toll on everybody. And the idea that it's going to go on for another year, which is what a lot of people are predicting, fills people with dread. And then, of course, I mean, I would say almost everyone in Ukraine knows somebody who's died, at least somebody, you know, and a lot of people have lost loved ones. Millions have had to leave their homes. So, I mean, it's a very, very, very hard time for Ukrainians, definitely.
And of course, we're also in the middle of winter to make matters worse on top of that.
Yeah, I mean, and with all these power cuts that have been caused by the Russian strikes, which have varying degrees of severity depending on where you live and whether you've got gas-based central heating or electric central heating. But yeah, lots and lots of people. In fact, one thing I realized slightly late into this campaign against the electricity infrastructure is that there are lots of buildings, tall buildings, where the lifts don't work when there's no electricity. And I rather naively presumed that anyone living on above the 15th floor, when they're in a place where the lift isn't going to work all the time, would surely leave, go stay with friends, or I don't know what I was imagining they had in terms of options. They don't have those options. Mm-hmm. They live on the 20th floor and they walk up 20 flights of stairs.
Yeah, and this is particularly difficult for elderly people.
Exactly,
or
of course.
The strikes on energy infrastructure, one tactic by Russia, another one, of course, information warfare. What challenges has that presented to you as a journalist?
Well, that's actually the reason that I'm here in the France 24 newsroom at the moment, because we've been having discussions exactly about this with the newsroom, about the challenges that this poses to all media. We are, in a way, caught up in an information war where we can be very easily manipulated, I think, and we have to be aware of that. And we also have to be aware of the need to be objective, but not necessarily neutral. That was what there's been a lot of discussion about what does it mean to be neutral. And I think the conclusion in terms of France 24's guiding principles is that we have to be objective, but we're in a situation where this war that Russia is waging against Ukraine fundamentally is unprovoked. You can debate about the geopolitical background and the reasons why it's happened, but you can't, in my view, in any way say that it's justified. And when you look at some of the crimes that have been committed by Russian soldiers in Ukraine, the massacres in Bucha, I mean, I've visited also the deoccupied areas of Kharkiv region in particular, the stories people tell there about being tortured by the Russian. You can't be neutral in those kinds of circumstances. But you have to also, make sure that we are being clear to our audiences why we're not neutral, why we think that this is something that we, in a way, have to take sides on, but why we are also absolutely committed to being objective and to also questioning the Ukrainians when we think that the things they're saying are not necessarily credible. But what I'd like to conclude, what we've been saying before, is like the level of credibility of what the Russians officially say is almost zero. The Ukrainians, you can question them sometimes, but there's definitely a clear difference in the level of credibility on the either side in terms of their communications.
Yeah, no small task doing that, but you're doing a great job for us in the field. You can see Gulliver's reports on our website, France24.com. Thank you, Gulliver.